Alright, as soon as it refocuses again. Hello! I am the author Lyle Aryn. Today I will be reading chapter 1 of my book, The Guardian. Might be, nope. I can't exactly see the entire screen because I have the camera set up. So I'm looking at you and not off to the side or whatever. Because we care. I will tell you, reading aloud is not my forte, so this is my fourth? Yeah, I've been trying this for a while. Anyway, chapter 1. Alrighty. In the darkness, all I could hear was her breathing. The exhalations came short and shallow, the panting of someone in pain. A soft glow seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, dimly and just to the point where the eyes could barely make out vague shapes. In this dim light, her breathing quickened. I could just make out the curve of a bare shoulder, the glint of steel. The hard metal was dark with rust, and formed the links of a massive chain that seemed to disappear into the shoulder. The light grew again, brighter, yet still misty darkness. In the pale light, her breathing became quiet sobs. I could just make out the shape of the girl suspended by the rusted steel. Dark hair flowed down, hiding her face, the black strands of it brushing the floor tiles a few feet below her. Along the chains were clear tubes pumping dark fluids. The light grew. In the weak glow, a wordless plea escaped her lips. The girl hung naked, hands bound behind her at a painful angle. Heavy drops falling from her body, hitting the plastic tiles with a muffled pitter-patter. On the other side of the room stood a dark, featureless shape. The thin light revealed the sheen of vinyl gloves, the glint of surgical steel, but no more. The light grew, painful bright now, surgically cold, ruthlessly illuminating. In the fierce white light, her breath stopped completely. Her head turned, first to the dark shape, and then to me. For the first time I saw her face, though it was still mostly hidden by her tangled raven hair. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide, green, with a red run of tears marking her pale cheeks. Mounting horror, I realized that the chains weren't rusted at all. The stainless steel was coated with blood. I struggled uselessly to go to her, to say something, to do anything to comfort her. The light vanished. In the darkness, she screamed. Timothy Kynes, wake up. You have work to perform. A feminine voice and shaking hands were pulling me from the nightmare. In the dim light that made it past my curtains, I wondered if this was just another layer to the dream. However, the throbbing in my head quickly dispelled that illusion. The hands that shook me were surprisingly strong. Her shaking nearly dislodged the bedding off onto the floor, and me along with it. As I focused my gaze at last, her appearance served to dispel the lingering effects of the troubled sleep I had been in. I pushed her hands away roughly and rolled off the bed. Pure instinct guided my motions as I stood to face her, awake and entirely confused. This is impossible. The fact that a stranger stood in my room was insignificant next to the woman herself. The room was brightly lit by a bluish light that emanated from the woman, or to put it more precisely, from where her eyes should have been. Two cold, blazing blue orbs seemed to serve in their place. These points of starlight blue rested in caverns of black, as if the light had cast a shadow. When I could tear my gaze away from hers, I noticed that the woman herself seemed to be a creature of bewildering contradiction. Her features were smooth, with nary a wrinkle to mark them. She still seemed to portray the very image of eternity. Her face was harsh, but perhaps that was only a trick of the eerie light. Her mouth was turned down into the permanence of terrible sadness. Once I had wondered what it would look like to be immortal. Now I knew. She was dressed simply in a white cloth gown. The shabbiness of the rag was magnified by the brilliance of her light. Iron shackles circled each wrist, though no chain ran between them. Even so, it was clear that she was someone's prisoner. She wore years of enslavement prominently. "Who are you?" I asked, the only question to escape my befuddled brain. Not a bad start. "That is not important to you. Soon I will be gone. I am only nothing. You are Timothy Kynes, the son of Jonathan Kynes?" I nodded, noticing then that the gown she wore was actually just a thin bedsheet. One of mine, in fact. It seemed obvious now why she hadn't turned on the light. The fabric was rather sheer. "Where are your clothes?" I asked, nervously. Quickly I tried to think if I had any friends that might hire someone like her for a joke. It didn't take long, though, for me to come up with nothing. I was a bit of a loner. What the hell is this? That isn't important either. It's hard enough getting us both here as it is. I couldn't be sure, but it seemed that she flushed a pale scarlet. That single reaction served to pinpoint her humanity in my mind. Strange as she was still flesh and blood. What is that supposed to mean? We were standing in my room. You haven't taken us anywhere. I wasn't speaking of you. Now listen quietly. I haven't got that much time here. All you're doing is speaking in circles. Unless your purpose here to drive me mad with senseless ramblings. I let an edge of authority into my voice, even though I knew very well I was just about as commanding as a kitten. Somehow it seemed as if her face softened. Her lips twisted into an expression that was almost apologetic. A deep sigh escaped her pale lips. "You have a very special job to do." "I thought that much was already clear," she stated, stopping again. "I had guessed that you would make a request of me." "That much seems to be implied by your presence here. However, I cannot read minds, and I would ask you to kindly tell me exactly what it is you would have me do. What do you want from me?" This whole thing was absurd. I could have believed I had fallen into another dream, except the blue light made my eyes hurt. "Very well, then. Perhaps I'm no longer accustomed to dealing with people bound to time in such a linear fashion." She took a deep breath. "Behind you, in your bed, is a young woman. Your job is to take care of her and to keep her safe. He will be coming for her. You must make sure that he doesn't take her away from you. Understand?" "No." I didn't dare look. The woman sighed dramatically. "Her name is Soaply Blossom. She is your age, or near enough. She has no memories, but considering everything she's experienced, that is probably for the best. Poor thing. Her time here may be short, yet I trust you'll make it pleasant." She picked her words out like crumbs from glass. "What are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke?" "Am I laughing? I was told to expect something like this, but I'd hoped your father would have said something to you about all this." The mention of my father increased the power of the throbbing headache. Anger welled up inside, turning my stomach to steel. I felt my ears burn, my hands clench, my arms shook. The cobwebs burned away, leaving only the cold rage. My father is dead. It's kind of difficult for him to tell me all about the woman with light bulbs for eyes that would break into my room and speak in gibberish. Then maybe he was fallible after all. Just because he's dead doesn't mean he can't still alter the course of events to come. It's just unfortunate that his son isn't accepting the task that's being laid out before him. I haven't said no. Nor would a negative answer affect the decisions that have been made. Either you will protect her, or you will fail," she said ominously. The uncomfortable silence that followed this exchange, I hazarded a glance behind me. Another woman, this one definitely young, laid atop the covers. The fact that she too was naked almost went unnoticed. One look at her face changed everything. Though I felt even more confused than before, I understood that my world, my priorities, had shifted. The girl had been the regular occupant of my nightmares for as long as I could remember. Always a victim of unspeakable horrors. One look into her sleeping face and the world had flipped. Dream had become reality, and the shadows now contained monsters numerous and terrible. It was as if gravity itself had shifted, as if I were on a planet that just discovered the sun. For the first time since my father died, I could feel the beat of my own heart. A beat of furious tempo, pounding like war drums. The hairs on my arms stood straight up, and I could feel strength pour into lethargic limbs. It took me a long moment before I realized the cause. Adrenaline. When was the last time you felt the surge of that? Excuse me. I can only hope that Mr. Kynes had his reasons for keeping you completely in the dark about all this. None of us knew what he was thinking even when he was still around to tell us. All that is left is to leave her here in your hands. If any sense at all, you will run at the first glimmer of trouble. Run as far as you can for as long as you can, because he'll never stop hunting you, the woman whispered. I turned to question her further, only to catch her vanishing in a flash of blinding blue light. The bedsheet fluttered to the ground. So complete was her disappearance, one could almost believe she had never been there at all. Though if I needed proof that it all happened, I needed to look no further than my own bed. I stared at her briefly as she slept, marveling at the delicate shape of her face, the oddly beautiful length of her ears. Her face was smooth in peaceful slumber, and surrounded by a lush pile of hair as black as charcoal. Every feature, from the pixie-like cheekbones to the impossibly shaped ears, served to draw my eyes to her own, closed though they were. I knew even with them shut that they would be green, just as impossible as her ears. Yet also completely right. The world should have felt surreal, for surely this was some kind of waking fantasy. Yet it was also clearly reality. I had entered a realm of impossibility, and now I had to act within it. Whoops. I had no idea what I was going to do. A glance at the clock drew my attention to a more pressing problem. Any moment now, Mom would walk in to tell me good morning and then goodbye. This simple morning ritual had become an anchoring point in our lives and was how we got each day started. It was a reminder that there was someone else with us in the swirling uncertainty that the world had become. However, the discovery of a strange naked woman lying in my bed would probably derail things just a bit. I pulled on my slippers and stepped out my bedroom door, closing it a little too quickly behind me. 20 feet separated my room from the house proper. My room had in fact served my father once as an office. My mother already stood on the gravel path that ran between the back door of the house and my room. I'm seeing some spelling mistakes. In fact, well, I'll just go ahead and mark a couple things here. Okay, sorry about that. One of the great things, take a moment, about independently publishing a book is, alright, we'll take the not so great, is you don't have an editor looking over your stuff. However, you could have, I guess, hired one. But I would point out that a lot of books that come out, a lot of them, done professionally, professional editing, all that, have spelling mistakes. So they happen. Great thing about doing independent publishing is I can go back and fix those, and the next person that buys it won't see them. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of special too. This is also one of the first prints of my book, so I've already done that a few times, but anyway, I'll get back to the story. My mother already stood on the gravel path that ran between the back door of the house and my room. Another moment, and I would have been too late. She was almost as tall as I, and had barely a wrinkle to show for her 40 years. She was strikingly beautiful, which sometimes caused her annoyances with the men at work. 3 years had passed since my dad died, but she still lived as if she would hear the thundering rumble of his charger coming down the street. He was simply, perhaps, on one of his trips. Though the cut of her business suit was proper and formal, she still managed to make it seem flirtatious just by wearing it. Her chestnut hair was worn up, her makeup minimized. Certainly it helped for her job to look nice, but that wasn't her intention with it. She wasn't a woman who was concerned with vanity. I sometimes caught her staring out the window at night, looking for the car that would never come, listening for her voice that would never again call her name. Her dark eyes were full of compassion or fire, depending on who was trapped in their gaze. And in rare and guarded moments, such as now, they were full of infinite sadness. Her heart knew that dressing up was just an act, that was just patchwork to keep the cracks from spreading. Wallpaper to hide the signs of the quake that had shook both their lives. I had the urge to tell her everything, to just blurt it out. Yet at the same time, I had no idea what I would say. Nobody explained it to you either. "Good morning, Mom," I said cheerfully, pretending not to notice her moment of sadness and covering my momentary hesitation. "Well, good morning, Tim. You're up early," she replied, her face becoming the mask of false smiles. "I've got some things I need to do today, so I thought I would get an early start," I replied casually. "Oh, can I give you a ride into town then?" she asked, her eyes asking a very different question. "Nah, I feel like walking. I need to eat something first anyway," I answered, not volunteering an answer to her unasked question. I had none to give. "Well, okay then. I am working late tonight. Boss needs me to stay after hours again to make sure all the paperwork for the merger gets done today." She hugged me and kissed my cheek. "Mom, prepare first, remember? Don't work too hard. You've been putting in a lot of late nights lately." "Oh, I know I am, sweetie. I'm taking some time off after all this is done. Maybe we'll go on a trip or something." A trip sounded like a fantastic idea to me, though I know it would be a little more than just a weekend vacation. "That sounds like a good idea to me, Mom. Have a wonderful day, okay?" I released her. "You too, honey. Be careful." She caught herself before asking what I was up to, and I felt relief I had the sort of mom that respected my privacy. She spun on her tasteful 2-inch heels and strode around the house. I waited until I heard her car pull away before returning to my room. On the other side of the door stood the girl, now awake. Her eyes were wide with alarm, and her mouth opened to scream, though only a tiny squeak escaped her lips. The sun shone bright upon her through the open door. For several seconds we just stared at each other, stunned into a brief shared silence. They remind me of the eyes of a cat. I shut the door, catching a glimpse of her turning around before it snapped shut. My brain was thrown into complete disarray. All my priorities just scrambled. The only clear thought was of her. She was all of 5'2", maybe, and thin. Though I dreamt of her for a long time, that foggy memory was nothing next to the reality. Her skin was as pale as cream, her hair as black as a crow's wing. Even now she seemed unreal. Surely no one could actually be that beautiful, that lovely. The impossibly long ears arched outwards, twitched with surprise. The only thing I might compare them to were those described by J.R.R. Tolkien when he spoke of elves. Only I'd always imagined those to be much shorter and pointed straight up, tucked tight against the skull. Hers were more graceful, curving away from her skull in line with the arch of her cheekbones. Even through the terror on her face, her eyes had pierced right through me. They were the impossible green I knew they would be. I had never seen eyes that green. A brief flash of bright light to cause the pupils to rapidly shrink into slits like the eyes of a cat. One panicky gaze had been enough to capture a piece of my heart, one glance to make it beat as it had not done for years. Finally, everything shifted back to their proper order. I felt a burning shame. Yes, she was gorgeous, strange. She was also scared. The woman had said she would have no memories. She must have been frightened out of her mind, and I had panicked out of mine. You're not the only one that ought to be afraid. I took a deep breath and reopened the door. My heart caught in my throat. She had dived under the blanket, leaving only a tangle of black strands visible. The bed shook as she sobbed pitifully, a sound one I could never forget. My embarrassment lost all of its power. Here was a girl with nothing. I was the only one that could help her. For some reason, I expected to step up because of who my father had been. Yet, that wouldn't be the reason I did anything. I would step up for her, because it was the right thing to do. Because I could not help it. She'd been haunting my sleep already. And I keep bumping that. I apologize, miss. I didn't mean to frighten you, I said, as gently as I could. I drew near the bed and paused, unsure of what to do or what to say, unsure of whether or not she would even understand me. Pepsi break. Whew. Been a long time since I've read this much out loud. Okay. The blanket moved and those green eyes peered out. The skin around them was red and swollen from tears. I sat down on the edge of the mattress, needing her to not fear me. I resisted an urge to pull her into my arms and hold her, to give her comfort that she might not desire. The last thing I wanted was to make her feel more terrified than she obviously was. The blanket inched down a little more, revealing her rose-colored lips quivering like leaves caught in the wind. They were cracked slightly, though whether from thirst or from biting I could not tell. Above them rested a nose to match everything else, a perfection of its delicately formed shape, something any supermodel would envy. Though her sobs had quieted, she had... Sorry. I could do all this fancy editing into the perfect video, but it's not very real. I feel mistakes and all. Alright. Though her sobs had quieted, she had no breath, could not speak around her trembling lips. My name is Timothy Kynes. Do you know who you are? I asked kindly. Her eyebrows, thin black lines of impossible eyes, knitted together, and she shook her head. Your name is Soberly Blossom. I was told that you probably wouldn't remember anything. Please don't be afraid of me. Promise I'm not going to hurt you. Where? Her voice was a little steadier. You are currently in my room. You haven't been here very long, though. As for where you're from, I don't know. She sat up and held the blanket out like a shield. Her eyes darted around the room, taking it in cautiously. I had no idea what she thought of the room, with its walls lined with bookshelves and a massive oak desk dominating the center. The bed was tucked into its own little nook, a curtain drawn to one side to expose it to the rest of the room. A door across the room led into a modest bathroom. The room had become my safe refuge, and I hoped some of its musty warmth would be apparent to her. She relaxed suddenly and dropped the edges of the comforter which pooled around her waist. If nothing else, the total lack of modesty was an indicator that her mind was truly empty. For my part, I felt pride that I didn't tense up or feel my cheeks warm. Timothy. Her voice no longer shook. I do not know who I am. I do not know why I am here, or even what sort of place a bedroom is. What is it I should do? Her voice, though barely above a whisper, was like a melody. She spoke formally, her words accented oddly, and the result was just lovely. I struggled not to shake my head. Get your mind focused here. Do something to reassure her. I don't have any answers. The one who brought you here didn't give me much information. I apologized. That wasn't very reassuring. She sank beneath the blanket again, began to shake again. How could I know what words are and not even know my own name? She whispered. Tears leaked from her eyes, and she was sobbing again. My heart broke for her, and I wondered what could be so bad that this would be better than remembering. I'm your guardian now, your shelter. I promise you I will keep you safe. I won't let any harm come to you, I said quietly, still resisting the urge to touch her. But then she surprised me by sitting up. With barely any hesitation, she leapt across the bed, throwing herself against me. Her arms were crushed against my chest, and her sobs gained force. I reacted the only way I knew how, gently encircling her with my arms, providing strength to counter her fears. I am scared, she sobbed. I realized then that it was a touch that she had wanted all along. She wanted more than just comforting words and gallant promises. She has nothing. She woke to a dark room, silent and empty, with a head just as silent. She's barely able to function above her basic instincts. She is scared, and she needs to feel safe. I can do that. I can make her feel safe. I rubbed her back softly, my fingers roaming carefully in a discreet tactile examination. What they discovered was shocking, and revived the anger that had died down within me. Rough, abraded skin twisted down her back in a series of scars. The more my fingers traced, the more they found a pattern that would be gruesome to witness in its entirety. More disturbing was how old some of them were, and how fresh others. 4 in particular still traced a heated course along her spine, barely healed. All were confined to the narrow field of her back. Everywhere else there was nothing but flawless skin, save for her wrists. As I held her out momentarily to confirm she was without current injury, I noticed a pattern of raised, calloused tissue around her wrists. I concluded that wherever she was from, she had been kept with arms bound together and then whipped repeatedly. To what end I couldn't even begin to guess at. You are safe now. I'll do my best to make sure no harm will ever come to you again. I promise, I whispered, wanting desperately to be able to ease her discomfort. I am empty inside. I have nothing. How can I not remember anything? How is that even possible? The questions echoed in my head. My own memory tried to make sense of it. Knowing just how badly her back had been scarred, it almost did seem a blessing she couldn't remember. Her own mind might have been shielding her from the trauma. It fit. Almost. If it hadn't been a consistently inflicted trauma. Pain inflicted upon her for years, the hands of someone that had been carefully cruel. That sure knowledge forced me to only one conclusion regarding the loss of her memory. She had been deliberately erased. More than likely, she'd been erased by the woman that had brought her to my care. If you had the power to just vanish like that, it seemed probable she could have had the power to delete your memories at will. Soulbly had been deleted like a computer and left with only the most basic operating functions. The ability to speak. It was a perversion, a sick and twisted action, unthinkable even. And yet here she was. I felt a bit ill. Why not let her know who she is? Surely there had to be something before the torture. I wish there was a way for you to remember. Even if a memory is painful, no one should ever be forced to forget it, to not even know who you are. I bit off a growl. Who is it that would make her suffer so much and then just empty her? If she was someone's personal plaything? Just what exactly is going on here? Who knows what it is she may have lost? who she may have lost. We remained silent for several minutes, each in our own contemplations. I pulled the blanket up around her shoulders, hoping that she may fall asleep. She seemed so tired and frail. I concentrated on letting my seething rage for some unknown enemy dissipate. There wasn't a thing I could do about them. Not at the moment, anyway. "You're so very warm. I think I was cold before," she whispered. Her hands curled into my shirt, and I held her just a little tighter. She was so lost, so scared. A child in the dark. I could almost relax, almost forget the fact that there wasn't a stitch on her. I marveled at how much nervousness, how much mental anguish could be caused just by someone being naked. In the bigger picture, it seemed hardly important at all. She needed comfort, and I was providing it. I felt content knowing that just my presence seemed to be enough to calm her. If all hell breaks loose, this won't always be so easy. In the back of my brain, a nagging fact tickled at me. As much as I may have wanted to, we couldn't stay here like this all day. I had a feeling life had become very interesting very quickly. Action delayed is just as bad as no action taken at all. She needed to be made ready to run. "I don't want to, but I need to get up now and find you something to wear. I think there may be something in the house that will work. You'll just need to get some things done today." "We will need to get some things done today. Just curl up and take a nap under the blanket, and I'll be right back," I said, trying to get up. She clutched me tighter, her limbs trembling. "Please do not leave me here alone. Take me with you? I do not want to be alone again," she whimpered. Thoughts whirled. "All right. I just need to find you something to put on in the meantime." "Why? What for?" Her confusion was clear on her face. I honestly had no idea how to explain the concept of clothing to her. Hard to not get noticed if I'm walking around with a naked woman under normal circumstances. She'd draw attention even fully clothed. Everyone wears clothes. We will want to be able to blend in, so you'll need clothes as well. We can't afford to have someone question us. We need some kind of hat, too. A bit warm for a stocking cap, though. Sunglasses might be a good idea, though people might just assume she had exotic contacts. "I do not seem to have any clothes," she replied. She seemed to be pretty smart, but I didn't know how I could teach her the complexities of a modern society in only a few sentences. "Yeah, I know. That's why I need to see if I can find you something in the house that you can wear." "I also need something just to go with you now?" "Yeah." 20 feet separated my room from the house proper, and there wasn't a fence to block the view. To top it off, the neighbors were very nosy. With the way my luck seemed to be going, walking her naked in the house would be noticed, reported, and discussed at length. I eyed the bedsheet worn by the other naked woman I had seen today, and dismissed it entirely. In the dark it was fine enough, but in the sunlight it would hide nothing. Towel wouldn't be much good either. "All right," she said, releasing me. I turned to my dresser with an idea. From a drawer I pulled out a t-shirt. I was a lot taller than her, and I guess it would easily hang down far enough to be considered decent. I tossed the green shirt to her, and then turned around to give her a measure of privacy. "Oh, that's funny. I'm wearing a green shirt today. Not planned." After a few moments spent trying not to imagine what I wasn't watching, a small hand touched my shoulder. I jumped slightly, startled. When I turned towards her, I choked. Whoa, errant comment. Bad one. My throat trying to both laugh and sigh and sob all at the same time. She put on the shirt inside out, and the tug stuck out beneath her delicate chin. I suppose I ought to feel grateful she got it on at all. Well, there is something I hadn't really considered. You don't really know how to dress yourself, do you? I shook my head, feeling both amused at her earnest attempt and worried that I was going to have to show how it was done right. I wasn't exactly a pervert or anything, but I was finding that I also But I was finding that I also wasn't entirely immune to all the effects the sight of a naked woman had on the male brain. Get over it. It isn't her fault she doesn't know how to do anything yet. What exactly are you afraid of? It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. You're afraid you're going to become something other than what you are? The voice in my head felt like my father's. I felt calm for a moment. I knew I was a decent person. I knew I was probably much more in control of myself than the majority of men my age. I wouldn't hurt her. It's just like taking care of a child that also happens to be an adult. Children need help getting dressed, eating properly, taking baths. I quickly stopped my thoughts. She looked up at me in confusion, no doubt wondering about the mix of expressions that had crossed my face. Did I do something wrong? Her bottom lip trembled and she dipped her chin. If this had been a bit on a sitcom, I would have probably been laughing. It wasn't so funny in real life. Yeah, but only a bit. Shirts don't go on quite like that. Oh, I guess I better try again. She reached for the bottom hem of the shirt, and I fought the almost knee-jerk reaction of turning away. She would need my help, so I put out a hand to stop her. If you turn around, I will help you this time. And probably every other time she needs it, or even just ask. I don't know what the reason might be. I can't exactly refuse her anything. Obediently, she turned her back to me, arms held loosely at her sides. That's good. Now, arms up, I said, trying not to sound weird, just like dressing a kid. Except she is beautiful, and the neighbors wouldn't think twice about it if I was helping a child get dressed. Well, maybe the Johnsons. Her arms went up, and I gently pulled the shirt off. Then I hesitated. It was easy to keep my gaze from drifting downward inappropriately, but that was because of the scars. There were more there than I had felt with my fingers, and the pattern even worse than I had imagined. The fresh ones were angry red, crisscrossing faded white lines. I had to fight to keep control, to keep my anger from resurfacing. I could not imagine what sort of monster it took to torture someone like this. I knew if I ever met that monster, I wouldn't be able to keep myself from becoming a bit of a monster myself. Death would be too gentle for such a person. I took a deep breath and turned the shirt right side out, then pulled it back down over her head, covering those hateful scars. I tucked the tag in nimbly and then gently turned her back to face me. Better? I asked. Yes, much better. It does not feel like it is choking me now, although that little flap kind of itches, she said, smiling shyly. I returned the smile, lost a little in her steady green gaze. My rage had been safely buried for the time being. At least she can be made to understand why it's worn a certain way, even if you can't quite explain the necessity. You get used to it. If you remember to keep that little tag in the back, on the inside of the shirt, that'll always be on correctly. You'll get the hang of it. You will help me get it right if I mess up again? She bit her bottom lip. Of course, I agreed. Truth be told, I would dress her every day if that's what she wanted. She radiated an innocence, a pureness of self that could not be faked, as if her spirit had been buried beneath a mountain of nothingness, bits of it shining through despite the rubble. It drew me to her, that pureness. I was becoming more hers with every passing moment, and she had no idea. She was sufficiently covered now, and yet that was almost worse. Instead of remaining bag-like, the shirt clung to her curves. The fabric was thin, and I realized it really wasn't much better than the sheet. Her wildly tangled hair pooled on her shoulders, framing the neckline that hung too low on her. While I was tall enough that my t-shirt could act as a makeshift dress, the best it could really do was ease her into the idea of wearing clothes. Maybe it'll be more concealing from a distance. Yeah, right. The neighbors would think nothing of me leading a girl out of my bedroom wearing one of my shirts. Screw what they think. That's the spirit. That was Chapter 1. I apologize for the mishaps. That's how it goes. I hope you enjoyed. Not Not sure. I'm playing around with the idea of reading more. I'm also playing around with the idea of reading passages from other books that I really enjoy. You kind of see the dim light, but I have a lot of books. So, when I get more of that figured out, I will certainly let you know. Till then, this is the author, Lyle Aryn, reading The Guardian. Alright. It's available on Amazon. If you search for... let's get that in frame. Not very good at this. There you go. You search for the author name, Lyle Aryn. I am the only one on there. That's spelled L-Y-L-E-A-R-Y-N. Should be simple enough to find the book. Plus, pretty distinctive cover. I wish I would stop losing focus. That, by the way, my niece. She helped me out with the cover. I'd also like to say this book is dedicated to the memory of Jim Torgerson. Thank you and have a lovely evening.